I remember that morning like it was a photograph burned into my brain. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a soft, golden haze over our suburban street in Naperville. I was standing in the kitchen, the smell of burnt toast still lingering in the air, when my wife, Emily, leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Our 4-year-old Ethan was sitting at the table, happily scribbling with crayons, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit our lives. I tried to make small talk, something normal, something that would feel ordinary in the midst of this fragile piece. "Hey, buddy, can you pass me the orange juice?" I said. Ethan handed it over, smiling up at me with those bright blue eyes that had always been my anchor. I glanced at Emily, and that's when I noticed it, the smirk on her face. The one that told me she knew something I didn't. "You should hear what my friend said yesterday," she began casually, tilting her head. She laughed so hard she almost spilled her coffee. She took a sip from her latte, eyes flicking to me. She said, "He's not your son, get the test." I froze mid-reach, the glass of juice trembling slightly in my hand. My heart dropped into my stomach like a lead weight. I laughed nervously, trying to hide the panic rising behind my ribs. "Ha ha, very funny," I managed, but my voice sounded hollow, even to me. My mind was racing faster than my heart. How could she even say that? About Ethan? My son. Emily laughed, a short, clipped laugh, not like her usual soft giggle. "I mean, it's just what she said. Relax, I'm just sharing." But there was something in her tone, something sharp, like a blade hidden in silk, that made me doubt her words were innocent. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile, trying to mask the fear that had begun creeping up my throat. Yeah, that's hilarious," I said, though the words felt like sandpaper in my mouth. I turned to Ethan, crouching beside him, and ruffled his hair. "Hey, champ, you excited for preschool today?" I tried to anchor myself in normalcy, but even his carefree laughter sounded like an echo in a cave, distant and unreachable. Later that day, at my office in downtown Chicago, I couldn't shake Emily's words. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at spreadsheets, emails, everything meaningless now. I had always trusted her implicitly. She was my wife, my partner, the mother of my child. And now, this seed of doubt had been planted, gnawing at every certainty I had about my life. By lunchtime, my rational mind began arguing with my panic. Of course, Ethan is my son. Emily wouldn't joke about something like that, would she? But the doubt lingered, like smoke in a room after a fire has been extinguished. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. Emily was in the kitchen again, prepping dinner with a serene, almost smug expression. Ethan was playing with his toy train on the floor. I couldn't wait any longer. "Emily, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice low, controlled. She turned, tilting her head, eyebrows raised. "What is it?" she asked, pretending innocence. But I saw it, the flicker of amusement in her eyes. "About Ethan," I said carefully, each word deliberate. "You said something this morning, about him not being mine." My throat was dry. I could feel the weight of the words like stones in my chest. She laughed, short and sharp, and shook her head. "You're ridiculous. Do you really think I'd say something like that seriously?" I felt a pang of anger, sharp and biting. "Then why did you say it? Why laugh like that?" My voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear underneath. Emily shrugged, turning back to the stove. "I don't know, maybe because it's funny. People joke, relax, you're being paranoid." But I couldn't relax. That night, I lay awake in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Ethan was asleep in the next room, and Emily was beside me, scrolling her phone, oblivious, or pretending to be. The doubt gnawed at me relentlessly. I tried to convince myself it was just a cruel joke, that she would never betray me like that. But somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered that the joke might not be on me, it might be on the truth. The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I would. I called our pediatrician, under the guise of a routine question about Ethan's health. "Actually, can you recommend a good lab for genetic testing?" I asked casually, my hands trembling as I held the phone. The secretary on the other end didn't bat an eye, and soon I had an appointment set. I didn't tell Emily. I couldn't. Every moment around her now felt like a tightrope walk above a pit of fire. One wrong word, one wrong glance, and everything would crumble. Ethan deserved to know the truth, but I wasn't sure I was ready for it myself. The week crawled by like molasses. Every laugh Emily shared with friends over the phone felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Every time she touched Ethan, my mind went to that moment in the kitchen, that tiny smirk, that laugh that had changed everything. Finally, the day of the test arrived. I held Ethan's hand as we entered the lab, his little fingers wrapped around mine, warm and trusting. My heart ached with love for him, and yet a shadow of fear loomed over us. I kept my voice steady as I explained the procedure to him in the waiting room, but inside, I was shaking. Emily was out that evening at her girls' night, or so she said. That detail, trivial as it might seem, became a silent relief. I wanted this to be between Ethan and me, untainted by her presence. I signed the consent forms, tried to smile at Ethan, and promised him ice cream after. As we left the lab, I felt the weight of the past week pressing down on me. Every laugh, every joke, every casual word from Emily had built a wall between us that I wasn't sure I could climb over. And yet, beneath it all, I clung to hope. Hope that Ethan was mine, that our life hadn't been a lie. That night, I barely slept. I checked the phone constantly, willing the lab to call, willing the results to come fast, wishing the world would speed up just enough for me to know the truth. I thought of that kitchen, that moment, that laugh. And I promised myself, silently, that no matter what, I would protect Ethan, even if it meant facing a truth I wasn't ready to hear. And then, just as the first light of dawn broke through the blinds, my phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. My hand hovered over the screen, trembling. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever I was about to hear. "Hello," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Mr. Collins," said the calm voice of the lab technician. "We have the results, and she paused, as if measuring her words. "They're conclusive." I swallowed hard, my entire body frozen. Conclusive. Those 6 letters felt heavier than any weight I had ever carried. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. The world narrowed to the sound of that voice, calm and clinical, delivering a verdict that could shatter everything I had ever believed. Conclusive, your son, Ethan, is not biologically yours. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. My chest tightened, my hands went numb, and for a moment I was certain the world had tilted on its axis. Not mine, not Ethan. My son. The child I had kissed goodnight every night, the little boy who had laughed at my terrible jokes, who had clung to my legs when he was scared, who had whispered, "I love you, Daddy," in the darkness, he was not mine. I sank to the floor of the living room, clutching my phone like it could somehow bring me back from the edge of this revelation. I felt the walls close in around me, the silence punctuated only by the distant sound of sirens outside and the soft hum of the refrigerator. A week ago, Emily had laughed, and I had brushed it off, laughed along with her, or at least pretended to. That laugh now felt like a blade, twisting inside me, sharper than anything I had ever imagined. I couldn't stay on the floor. I had to move, had to think, had to act. The world felt unreal, distorted, as if I were walking through a nightmare painted in muted colors. My first instinct was anger, hot and blinding. Emily, she had known. She had always known. That smirk in the kitchen wasn't casual. That clipped, cruel laugh had been deliberate. I drove to her office downtown, the streets of Chicago passing by in a blur, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. My mind was a storm, swirling with questions, accusations, and a desperate need for answers. I arrived outside her building and hesitated for a moment, breathing through the trembling in my chest. Emily's office was quiet when I arrived. She looked up from her desk, surprised to see me, the usual calm, polished professional smile frozen on her face. "Sean, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I didn't have words that could capture the cyclone inside me. Instead, I thrust the phone into her hand, the lab's call still on the line. Her eyes widened as she listened, her carefully curated composure cracking, if only for a second. This can't be right," she whispered, her voice tight, almost strangled. I had never heard fear in her tone before, only arrogance, control, amusement. Now it was there, hiding behind the veneer of professionalism. I shook my head, rage bubbling beneath the surface. "Don't you dare lie to me, Emily. Don't. I heard it with my own ears. Ethan is not mine. And you knew, you laughed in my face." Her hands trembled slightly, and she looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That tiny hesitation confirmed everything I had feared. She had known. She had betrayed me in the most intimate, personal way possible. I didn't mean," she started, but the words faltered useless. I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years, a desire to protect, to reclaim what I thought was mine, and a raw, burning need for justice. "You need to tell me everything." "Now," I said, my voice steady, cold, slicing through the office air like a knife. Her lips pressed together, and she finally met my gaze, her eyes glossy with a mix of fear and defiance. It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she admitted. "I didn't know how to tell you. I never meant for you to find out like this." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the empty office. "Not supposed to happen. Emily, you lied for years. You made me believe, you made me love this child as my own while you knew he wasn't mine." Her gaze dropped to the floor. I panicked. I thought maybe it would all work itself out. I didn't want to hurt you." "You hurt me, Emily," I said, voice rising. "Every single day you knew and didn't tell me. Every night I kissed him goodnight, every laugh, every hug, I believed he was mine. And you toyed with me." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. I was furious, devastated, and broken, but I needed clarity, needed to understand the depth of this betrayal. She swallowed, finally speaking again, her voice small, fragile. It was your best friend. I didn't plan for it. It just happened. One night, one mistake, and then Ethan." I stumbled back, shock rooting me to the floor. My best friend. The man I had trusted above everyone. The one I had confided in, laughed with, shared my life with. And now my child was the product of that betrayal. I felt vomit rise in my throat, anger and grief colliding, creating a storm I couldn't contain. "You're telling me you had an affair with him, and this child is the result." My voice cracked, and I felt my knees weaken. Emily nodded, unable to meet my eyes. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. Everything I had built, our life, our family, felt like it had been built on sand, collapsing beneath me. Finally, I forced myself to stand, my fists clenched at my sides. "You know what this means, don't you?" I said, my voice low, dangerous. "You've destroyed our marriage, Emily. You've destroyed the trust that took years to build, and you've taken my son from me in a way I can't even put into words." She whimpered softly, but I didn't let her see me falter. I had to be strong. For Ethan. For the boy who still smiled at me, oblivious to the chaos swirling around him. "I'm going to protect him," I continued, my voice steadier now, colder. "I don't care what it takes. I will make sure he knows the truth when he's ready, and I will make sure you never manipulate him again." Emily's face paled. She tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "Save it. There's nothing you can say that will undo this." I left the office then, walking out into the Chicago streets, the cold wind biting at my face. I felt hollow, emptied, as though someone had carved a piece of me out and left me bleeding. But beneath that hollow shell, a spark ignited, a spark of resolve. I would not let this betrayal define my life. I would not let Emily's lies and my best friend's betrayal destroy the love I had for Ethan. That night, I sat in my car, parked outside the lab, thinking about what I had to do next. Lawyers, custody, confrontation, everything loomed like a dark mountain before me. But through it all, one thought kept me grounded. Ethan. He deserved the truth. He deserved a father who loved him unconditionally, even if biology had no part in it. And as I watched the city lights flicker through the windshield, I swore to myself that I would not rest until every secret was uncovered, every betrayal exposed, and justice, whatever that meant in a world so cruel, was served. Because some truths are too powerful to ignore, and some betrayals are too deep to forgive. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, the city still wrapped in darkness, streets empty except for the occasional hum of a passing car. I couldn't go back to the life I had before. Every laugh, every bedtime story, every ordinary morning with Ethan was now tinged with betrayal. Emily had shattered the world I had built, and I couldn't let her get away with it. I decided I needed help, someone objective, someone who could guide me through the legal and emotional labyrinth ahead. I called a family attorney I had worked with years ago, explaining the situation in careful, clipped sentences, leaving out the raw edges of rage that still burned inside me. I booked a consultation for that afternoon. As I hung up, I felt a presence behind me. Ethan had wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, clutching his favorite stuffed bear. "Daddy?" he mumbled, voice small, my chest tightened. I pulled him close, holding him in the dim morning light. "Hey, buddy, everything's okay, I promise." His trust, so pure and unconditional, hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't let it break. By noon, I was in the sleek, glass-walled office of Harrison and Cole attorneys, sitting across from a sharply dressed attorney named Victoria Cole. She exuded a calm authority, the kind that made you feel like everything was going to be handled, even when your world was collapsing around you. "Mr. Collins," she began, reviewing the documents I had brought, "this is intense. But from what you've told me, you have grounds for full custody and potentially a case for intentional emotional harm." I nodded, every word from her feeling like a lifeline. "I want to protect my son. I don't care about anything else, just him. And I want Emily to understand the consequences of what she's done." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "You'll get your chance, but be prepared, this won't be simple. She's clever, manipulative, and the fact that her affair involved someone close to you complicates things emotionally for you, but legally, it strengthens your case in some ways." I left the office feeling both empowered and hollow. The city streets felt sharper now, every passerby a reminder that life goes on while mine had been derailed. I drove home slowly, rehearsing the confrontation I knew was coming. Emily would have to face me, and I would need every ounce of control I could muster to make sure I didn't lose myself in rage. When I arrived, the house was quiet, but Emily was there, sipping coffee in the sunroom, her laptop open. "Sean," she said, attempting casual, like the last week hadn't been a bombshell dropped in my life. "I thought we could talk." I didn't let her finish. "Talk," I said, voice sharp. "You want to talk? Or do you want to explain why you laughed in my face, why you lied about my own son, why you let me love him while knowing the truth?" Her smile faltered, fingers tightening around her mug. I was scared, Sean. I didn't know how to." "Scared?" I interrupted. "You think fear excuses betrayal? You think fear makes up for every day I believed in a lie? Every hug, every bedtime story, every 'I love you, Daddy,' all lies to you?" Emily's eyes welled up with tears, but I could see the calculation behind them, the instinct to manipulate still there. "I never wanted to hurt Ethan," she said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you either." I shook my head, the anger bubbling up again. "Don't you dare bring Ethan into this. Don't you dare use him as your shield. You think a half-hearted apology erases years of lies? It doesn't. It can't." She shrank back slightly, the confident mask cracking. "Then what do you want from me?" I leaned closer, my voice icy. "I want honesty. I want the truth about everything. Who he is, how this happened, why you thought it was okay to hide it. And I want to make sure you never manipulate him, or me, again." The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. Emily's hands trembled as she set her mug down, finally facing me. She swallowed, then began recounting the affair, the guilt, the fear of losing me. Each word was another dagger, but it also gave me clarity. I could see the pattern, the calculated deception, and the moments where she could have chosen to stop the betrayal but didn't. By evening, I knew what I had to do. I contacted the lab to ensure I had all documentation of the paternity results. I also began compiling evidence of Emily's knowledge and intent, messages, emails, phone records. Every laugh, every joke about Ethan not being mine, every casual reference now served as proof. The next morning, I called my best friend, the man who had betrayed me, and asked to meet. My hands shook as I waited in the cafe, the cold coffee doing little to steady me. When he walked in, his face turned pale as he saw me. "Sean," he began, but I cut him off. Just don't, I know everything." His lips pressed into a thin line, eyes darting nervously. "Look, Save it," I said, voice low and dangerous. "I trusted you, I shared my life with you, and you took advantage, and now my son is a product of your betrayal." He flinched, guilt plain on his face. I didn't mean for it to happen. I slammed my hand on the table. "Not meant to happen. You knew what you were doing, and now you're going to face the consequences too." We sat in tense silence, the cafe around us oblivious to the hurricane in our corner. My mind raced, plotting the next steps, the confrontations, the legal maneuvers. Everything was moving now, truths being exposed, lies unraveling. By the time I drove home, dusk had settled over Naperville, the streetlights flickering to life like watchful eyes. I walked in quietly, Ethan asleep in his room. I paused outside the door, listening to his soft breathing, remembering the mornings and nights before this nightmare began. My resolve hardened. I would protect him. I would fight for him. No betrayal, no matter how deep, could take away what mattered most: his safety, his love, his trust in me. That night, I drafted a plan, legal, emotional, strategic. I would confront Emily formally, initiate custody proceedings, and make sure the truth of her affair, her lies, and her betrayal was documented beyond doubt. Every step was calculated, but every thought centered on one thing: Ethan. And deep down, beneath the rage and heartbreak, a new emotion began to take hold, an almost vengeful determination. She had underestimated me. She had underestimated the bond I shared with my son, the lengths I would go to protect him, and the fire that burns when a man realizes everything he loves has been stolen. I knew the battles ahead would be brutal, but I also knew this: I would emerge on the other side, stronger, unbroken, and with Ethan safe in my arms. Because some truths are worth fighting for and some betrayals demand a reckoning. The morning sun spilled across the living room, catching dust motes in its glow, but it didn't warm me. I sat at the kitchen table, papers spread in front of me, custody forms, emails, text printouts, lab results. Every line, every signature, every timestamp was a weapon in the war I had been forced into. Ethan toddled in, rubbing his eyes, and climbed onto my lap. "Daddy?" His voice, soft and innocent, shattered the tension just enough to remind me what I was fighting for. I hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of him pressed against me, his small body clinging as if he already sensed the chaos around him. I whispered promises I wasn't sure how to keep yet, but I had to try. "It's just you and me, buddy. We'll get through this." Later, I confronted Emily at the house, this time with Victoria at my side. The moment she opened the door, her posture stiffened, eyes darting nervously. She didn't meet my gaze. Not now, not when the evidence lay on the table between us like a dagger. "Emily," I said, voice steady, sharp as glass. "We need to talk, and this time I don't want excuses, I don't want jokes, I want truth." She swallowed hard, hands twisting in front of her. "Sean, please, can't we?" I cut her off, slamming the printed emails and lab results on the counter. "No, we can't. You lied, you betrayed me. You laughed in my face while hiding the truth about my own son. You thought you could control the narrative, manipulate me and Ethan. Not anymore." Her eyes flickered toward Ethan's room, and I caught a shadow of guilt, brief, fleeting, but it didn't soften the resolve burning in me. "You think a tearful apology fixes this? You think it undoes the years of deceit?" I leaned in, voice low, dangerous. "You underestimated me. You underestimated what it means to be a father, and now you'll face the consequences." She whispered, I never meant for it to happen like this." "You never meant?" I echoed, incredulous. "You planned it, Emily. You planned to betray me with my best friend. You calculated every lie, every laugh, every detail to keep me in the dark. And now, justice has a name, and it's mine to wield." Victoria spoke calmly from the side. "Sean, you have the legal grounds, the proof. We need to initiate the custody paperwork today. Emotional manipulation is a factor here. This will protect Ethan." I nodded, feeling a cold clarity wash over me. Everything I had felt, rage, heartbreak, betrayal, was now weaponized into strategy. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused, precise, unstoppable. By the afternoon, the filings were submitted. The judge's office confirmed a temporary custody arrangement, granting me primary custody while the case proceeded. Emily was stunned, her previous arrogance replaced by disbelief and fear. I watched her shrink under the weight of her own actions. When I returned home with Ethan that evening, the house felt different. Empty of lies, yes, but full of potential. I made dinner, told Ethan stories, and listened to his laughter, the sound almost sacred now. Every giggle reminded me why I had to fight. This was my son in every sense that mattered. Biology didn't define fatherhood. It was love, protection, and unwavering commitment. And I would give him all of that and more. The next week was a blur of meetings, confrontations, and strategic moves. I confronted my best friend in front of his own lawyer. He was quiet, defensive, and visibly shaken, but he knew the damage was irreversible. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, but the icy, unyielding look in my eyes said enough. He would feel the weight of his actions, just as Emily would. Meanwhile, Emily began to unravel. Every attempt to manipulate, to excuse herself, was met with cold documentation and careful legal responses. She called repeatedly, leaving voicemails full of half apologies and guilt-laden explanations. But I didn't answer. Every day, the reality of her betrayal solidified, and with it, my resolve. One evening, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he whispered, "Daddy, will Mommy come back?" I kissed his forehead, brushing hair from his eyes. "Mommy will be around, buddy, but right now, it's just you and me, and that's okay, because I love you more than anything. Always remember that." He nodded, smiling sleepily, clutching his stuffed bear. I stayed beside him until he fell asleep, watching his chest rise and fall, listening to the gentle rhythm of his breathing. My heart ached for the innocence that had been threatened, for the trust that had almost been broken beyond repair, but it also swelled with a new strength. Days later, Emily showed up unannounced, standing at the door with tear-streaked cheeks. "Sean, can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. I didn't need to. I stood in the doorway, the sun casting long shadows behind me, and for the first time, I truly saw the consequences of her actions etched on her face. Fear, guilt, shame, emotions she had tried to hide, now impossible to ignore. "You've lost control," I said, voice calm but firm. "You thought you could manipulate me, Ethan, everyone around you. But the truth has a power you underestimated, and you will answer for it. Your laughter, your lies, they don't get to define my life or Ethan's." She swallowed hard, words failing her. She had no mask left. The smirk, the casual jokes, the subtle manipulations, they were gone, replaced by the stark realization of defeat. I turned, walking back inside, leaving her on the porch. She wouldn't follow. She couldn't, and that was the point. The control she had exercised for so long was now completely stripped away. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at Ethan's small bed through the doorway. I thought about the future, the battles still ahead, and the scars that would remain. But I also felt a profound sense of liberation. I wasn't just surviving betrayal anymore. I was taking it back, shaping it, turning it into justice, into protection, into something that could never harm us again. In that quiet, I realized something essential. Love doesn't come from blood alone. It comes from commitment, from sacrifice, from being present when it matters most. And I would be there, always, for Ethan. The morning of the court hearing arrived gray and heavy, clouds pressing down on Chicago like a silent reminder of the storm that had overtaken our lives. Ethan clutched my hand tightly as we walked into the building. His little grip was warm, trusting, unwavering, and it was the only thing keeping me grounded as adrenaline coursed through my veins. Emily sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, her posture rigid, eyes darting nervously. She looked small here, diminished, stripped of the confidence she had wielded like armor for so long. The smug, casual woman who laughed about my son in the kitchen was gone. In her place was someone finally facing the consequences of her actions. Victoria, my attorney, leaned down and whispered, "Stay calm, Sean. Let the facts speak. Your strength is your presence, not your anger." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I looked down at Ethan, who was fidgeting in his chair but holding onto his stuffed bear. I smiled at him, feeling a surge of determination. This is for him. Everything I do today is for him. The judge entered, a stern woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through everyone in the room. She called the case to order, and the hearings began. Emily's attorney spoke first, attempting to portray her as a victim of circumstance, a mother who had made one mistake but still deserved access to Ethan. He spoke quickly, confidently, trying to paint her as remorseful and cooperative. But then it was my turn. I stood, my palms steady, my voice calm but firm. "Your Honor," I began, glancing at Ethan briefly, "this case is not about anger. It's about truth and protection. Ethan deserves a father who will love him unconditionally and a mother who cannot manipulate or deceive him. The evidence you will see proves a sustained pattern of deceit, lies told over years, manipulation of trust, and betrayal by someone he should have been able to depend on." Victoria laid out the paternity results, the documented communications, and Emily's own admissions. Each piece of evidence was clear, undeniable. Every laugh, every joke about Ethan not being mine, every casual remark, now a testament to betrayal, not humor. Emily's face paled as the facts were presented, her mouth opening and closing without words. The smugness, the deflection, the casual manipulation, gone. She couldn't hide from the truth now. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. Mr. Collins, you have presented a compelling case, she said. The court recognizes the emotional and psychological impact this deception has caused. After reviewing all the evidence, the temporary custody arrangement will be made permanent. Mr. Collins will have primary custody of Ethan. Ms. Emily Collins will have supervised visitation, pending further assessment. Relief and vindication washed over me in equal measure. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I held them back, focusing instead on Ethan. I leaned down and whispered, "We did it, buddy. You're safe, you're mine, and we're going to be okay." Ethan's eyes lit up, a bright smile breaking across his face. "Really, Daddy?" he asked, voice full of hope and innocence. "Really," I said, hugging him tight. "No one can ever take that away from us." The aftermath of the hearing was quiet, almost surreal. Emily didn't resist the verdict, though I knew she seethed behind her composed exterior. My best friend had been confronted privately, forced to accept the consequences of his betrayal as well. Every detail, every deception had been exposed, leaving them both powerless. That night, as I put Ethan to bed in his room, I lingered by his side, tracing his small hand with mine. "You know something, buddy?" I said softly. "Nothing, not lies, not betrayals, not anything, can ever change how much I love you. You're my son in every way that matters." He smiled sleepily, eyes heavy with the onset of dreams. "I love you too, Daddy." As I watched him drift off, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for weeks. The rage, the heartbreak, the betrayal, they hadn't broken me. They had refined me, sharpened me into someone capable of protecting what mattered most. Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. Ethan and I had our mornings together, breakfasts filled with laughter, bedtime stories that lasted longer than necessary, and quiet evenings on the couch where he would curl up beside me, safe and warm. Emily's presence was minimized, controlled, supervised, but the weight of her actions lingered in the edges of my mind. I reminded myself constantly, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about security, about love, about stability for Ethan. And yet, sometimes, in the quiet moments when Ethan slept and the house was still, I allowed myself a private satisfaction. The satisfaction of knowing that betrayal has consequences, that lies cannot stand against truth, that those who manipulate and deceive will one day be held accountable. I looked out the window at the city skyline, lights twinkling against the dark sky, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not naive hope, not fragile hope, but the kind that comes from surviving betrayal, from fighting for what you love, from protecting what is yours. Ethan stirred in his sleep, murmuring something softly. I leaned over and kissed his forehead. "Sleep well, my boy," I whispered. "Tomorrow is another day, and I promise it will be a good one." In that moment, I realized that the greatest revenge isn't cruelty. It's living fully, loving deeply, and never allowing deceit to take what truly belongs to you. I had survived betrayal, exposed lies, and reclaimed my life. And most importantly, I had protected my son. As I turned off the light and stepped quietly from his room, I knew one undeniable truth. The laughter that once haunted me, the lies that once cut me, would never define our story. Ours was a story of resilience, of courage, of love that no betrayal could destroy. And in the quiet of that night, with Ethan safe and sleeping peacefully, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The storm had passed, and we had survived together.